true identity of life, which is awareness, which is absolutely everywhere, is cosmic. It touches everything in all existence everywhere. It is aware of that. It is in all things, and all things are in it. It is a total awareness of life. Some people call it God. It's the true identity of life, the source of all creation. Okay, true identity. Wonderfully peaceful, aware of everything, boundlessly energetic and joyful, joyous, enlightened mind, right? Now, the person, the people, the human, inside the human being is a brain. Inside that brain is a process of thinking, a process of perception, of sensations, all sorts of things going on inside the brain. All of those perceptions, the source of them is the senses. The brain is operating via the senses of the body to touch a little piece of the world, a little bit of the world, a little bit of the universe, right? It's feeling a little bit of it, it's seeing a little bit of it, it's hearing a little bit of it. All of that is secondhand information though, because it takes time for those things to occur, to then travel to the brain. So the brain is interpreting what's happening a little bit behind. So that's one point, which is very deep. We'd have to get into that. But at the same time though, there is an identification with all of that movement. There is a belief inside the brain that there is an entity, an individual entity, which is the one in control, the one doing all of this. It's the one having this experience. And so the perception, the perspective of that individual entity is to be an individual, separate and in control and responsible for the whole of the life. That's a tiny perspective, a fragmented, tiny perspective of life. Now that entity believes that it's alive, and it believes that it's the one doing it, and it has complete disregard for the truth, the reality, that actually all of life is everywhere doing this, and that all of life is the one that is doing this, and it is the one in control, and it is a process of spiritual unfoldment and spiritual evolution via the relationship between spirit and matter. The whole picture of life is the one doing this, unfolding everywhere. But the individual entity in the brain has the perception that it is the one in control. That's why it's insane. So to follow that is to completely disregard the true perspective of life and fall into a false fantasy that you as the individual are the one who is doing this. Now that thing is subject to an ending, which means death. So that thing is going to die. And it's terrified of that because it thinks that's the end. It's also, because it's operating within the brain, it's confined to memory. So it has all of these memories of a past. It thinks that it's had a past. And it identifies with those experiences and those memories. And so some of them were horrible, some of them were traumatic. It was also conditioned by society and childhood. And so it's taken on all of that data and information as within its identity of mum's name, dad's name, desires, my religion, the religion that was given to it from birth. It's got all of that going on in there, a big pile of crap. And it's stuck in that process. It can't get out of it because all of that is the contents of the brain. And the brain experiences life through the senses of the body. So it's a tiny little fragmented self-identity, body, brain. Now to be confined to that is to think, to feel like you are separated from all of life, that you are alone, and that's just not the truth. Now getting back to the social element, it's that up to now we have used to build our life with as individuals collectively, and that has formed as the society so far. It's greedy. Because it experiences the world only via the brain, it is a purely material experience of life, and so it thinks that life is all about materials, and it wants to have lots of materials, it wants to have lots of material experiences. And so throughout the years, over the course of millennia, society has evolved to be very hyper-focused on materials, material experiences, which is what we see, a complete abuse and consumption of all of the resources. these are all very deep topics which can all be broken down into multiple layers, each of them. But another important element of it is, because it is a finite resource, the egoic consciousness of the individual is finite. It can only last a certain amount of time, but it gets passed on to the next generation. If you have children, your egoic consciousness gets passed on into the brain of that one, and so it evolves over time. That's why it's actually a spiritual process. It's been going on for billions of years. You're not the one doing this. The brain is being conditioned by evolution, but we are now ready to evolve beyond it. We've all reached a point where we no longer can follow that illusory identity. The energy is becoming too intense. Our spirit is magnifying in intensity and waking up from this dream of separateness. And so now we need to forge a new way, a spiritual way of living collectively, which is what Mystic Society is representing and discussing. But one of the things that we've seen, because the ego is responsible so far for the construction of society, is that as this generational egoic consciousness has been passed along, and one being, one entity has chased material resources and then passed those material resources and the responsibility for those material resources onto their family, now in the modern era, in 2024, we have a select few group of families who have amassed all of the resources on the planet, who are hoarding it for themselves, who don't want to share it with the rest of the population because they're trying to hold on to their legacy, their personal empire, their traditional conditioning that's been passed on to them. And so there is a massive imbalance of the resources, the allocation of resources to the life here, which is why so many people are starving, so many people are without healthcare, so many people are without homes, and that those who follow the material systematic way of being have all of the resources at the top, and they have more than they need, you know, the kind of pyramid, the top of the pyramid. They have all that they need. Sorry, they have more than they need, and they can have everything that they want. And yet the people at the bottom of the structure, the social structure, can't afford what they need and are being left out in the cold, because it's a system that is pushing towards a never-ending pursuit of material gain, which is unreachable. In fact, it ends in total self-destruction, because as one group amasses the resources, and they have all the resources they can gather from their specific environment, all they can do is look to the resources of their neighbor, and their greed, their pursuit, endless pursuit of material desires wants it too. Now you have war. Those apparently two different entities will go to war with each other to try to grab the other person's resources. And the ego makes an enemy of the other consciousness. All right. Anyway, big tangent, but that was, I think, the answer to your question.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Don't go that way. Okay? Instead, go in the opposite direction, which is one in which a life must be established with more of a total awareness of the immaterial elements of one's being, the spiritual elements of one's experience, which is what meditation introduces you to. And as the totality of consciousness comes into view, one's life takes a more of a circular, spherical experience in which the energy of love is cultivated, the energy of relationship is cultivated, the energy of mind and body is cultivated, as opposed to seeking material things. There is fundamentally, essentially, a relationship between the spirit and the matter, but there's supposed to be a harmonious relationship in which the spirit can experience its life and sustain its life, sustain its ability to observe life through the body and have a human experience by using material means to sustain that. But it's not about amassing and owning and trying to grab onto the material. It's almost like a food. It's more like a food. The material elements of life are supposed to be a food for you to eat while you live, to sustain your life form, the body that you're in, for a longer period of time, so you can have a longer experience of being a physical being. But people have got it the wrong way around, and they chase the material, which leads to just, well, destruction, actually, and disease, ultimately.